welcome to Business Matchmaker TV. I'm so pleased today to introduce our guest today. He's fascinating, with an equally fascinating journey. I'm just going to ask a question to the listeners out there. How many can claim that they've had popcorn thrown over them by Julia Roberts in Notting Hill nonetheless? Or have you been sworn at by Kate Winslet? I'm not sure. When I was sent the details for Dexter, I just smiled. I had a very big smile on my face while I was reading this. And I think I'm going to save some of those other stories and formally introduce you. So Dexter, welcome today to Business Matchmaker TV, a presenter for QVC Shopping Channel, coach, a trainer, estate agent, we'll ask about that one, a speaker and an author. So welcome. Wow, I'm not sure half an hour is going to do you justice, if I'm being honest with you, with a fantastic list like that. So please, where did it start? Because that's an impressive lineup, I think.
Thank you. Some would say that I flipped from one thing to the other, but no, and thank you, first of all, for inviting me to have this conversation.
No, my pleasure. Thank you for the time.
It's lovely. Yeah, it has been a varied career. I think they now call it a portfolio career, don't they?
Okay.
And so, yes, I started way back in advertising, as my grey hairs will show. And I suppose that's where it created my love of words. And I worked with some incredible people. Sir Alan Parker, for one, who's now a BAFTA-winning director. And so from there, I went into property. As you said, I was an estate agent. And, people go like that now. But that was interesting. And that's where I started to learn how to influence and persuade people. And my love had always been to go into the theatre or to be an actor. And so the thing with Kate Winslet and Julia Roberts was in my time as a background artist, or an extra, as they call it.
Yeah.
And I was in some incredible films. Kate Winslet, it was Kenneth Branagh's Hamlet, which was amazingly exciting. And yes, the other claim to fame was during an interval, Julia Roberts threw popcorn at me. So.
Was it something you said, or was it something you did, or did she just throw popcorn at you?
She just fancied. I was sitting right behind her, and if ever you see Notting Hill, and you see they pan across to that scene where he's in the cinema wearing goggles. Hugh Grant is wearing goggles because his mate has pinched his glasses, and so it was late evening. In fact, I think it was a night shoot, and it was just so much fun, just sitting there, looking at her and thinking, where's the magic? She's not that pretty, but obviously it happens when the camera rolls and that happens.
Absolutely. Yeah. But I mean, what a story though, and absolutely brilliant. So you've had a wonderful career. I mean, I think for translating from an estate agent then to be on the set of Notting Hill, I think probably what you've learned as well is a lot of communication skills, people skills. To being an estate agent, you have to be able to communicate and convey and sell. Ultimately, yes. That's what they do. So what skills have you picked up sort of that have transferred through your career, do you think?
I think the main thing that I learned, and certainly as an estate agent and training negotiators, is how to be user-friendly. And we now realize, and certainly through my QVC experience as well, selling on shopping telly, is that it is about creating an emotional connection, creating a relationship. And so many of the companies that I've worked with and their sales teams and things like this, that's the key for me, is understand the other person.
Yeah.
Don't think about you selling to them, but understanding what their needs are and matching those needs. And it's very trite in saying that. Most salespeople will say that, understand the client's needs, but you truly have to want to find out where the difficulties are, where the pains are, to see if you can, again, truly help them through that difficulty.
Absolutely. And I don't think that's changed today. And I think certainly we're interviewing during a very difficult situation. We're in middle of COVID. But I think the emphasis is coming back in quite a big manner, actually, of having to look after your clients and helping them. What do they need? It's not actually about the pound signs. It's about the clients. How do we help them?
And you know, we were talking before we came on
Yeah.
air, and you made a very important point, that it's about our attitude. You know, COVID could drive us down. And you know, there's lots of difficulties out there, but also there's lots of opportunities. I mean, I'm running, as you know, a virtual board, and we meet twice a month for an hour and a half and understand what people's talents are and help them. And I'm going to use that word that everybody else is using, pivot.
Yeah.
And for me, pivot actually should have an acronym, and the P should be positive attitude. The only thing we can control is our attitude to things. And as you said, if we think positively, if we look for the opportunities, then we can get over this difficult period.
I think so. If we come into a situation and we're already preparing to fail, unfortunately, it's going to happen in
Yes.
some shape or form, because your
Yes.
mindset is not right. You're not thinking anything that positive, that you can achieve what you're going to set out to achieve. So no, thank you for that. So when you started, well, tell me, how did you get into QVC? Because that's quite a big thing, and you know that's still going.
It is
It's still very popular.
Very popular. I mean, it as a worldwide brand, it's enormous. I think last year, and when I mention these figures to people, they go, "No, it can't be." It was something like $11 billion worldwide. It's not a small company, and when you think that they sell other people's products, so it's a little bit like an online Amazon, effectively. In
Yeah.
fact, I think that something like QVC paved the way for catalog purchasing, which is what Amazon is effectively. So how did I get into it? I mean, as we said before, I trained negotiators. I trained them to be user-friendly, to understand what the prospects' needs were, and to connect with vendors as well. And so a pal of mine said, Dex, he said, you know, I've got a range of products I'd like to sell on QVC, the shopping channel. Would you do it for me? So I said, yeah, sure. What's QVC? I didn't even know. I certainly didn't realize that it was a live TV broadcast. So it's not scripted. Obviously, people do a lot of research when they are selling a product, as do the presenters. And so I did it. I sold, this shows you how long ago, I sold a range of video recorders.
Oh, wonderful. We still say that though in this house. I think we still say, should we just video that? And
Yeah.
my daughter's very quick to pick up. No, we will. Well, Skype plus it, you know, or whatever the platform you're using. But she will correct us. But I think that's very ingrained in us, that we'll just video it.
Yes, and so even with CD machines and with DVD players, it's still, you know, let's watch a video, isn't it?
It is.
Amazing.
I don't think that will go, unfortunately.
No.
So I really like that attitude though, because it's very much a case of, I'll say yes and I'll learn about it later.
Yes. It was amazing, and it was a wonderful experience. I certainly, a lot of the things I learned in terms of how to connect through the television screen. And in fact, this is exactly what we're doing now. It's come full cycle. I mean, I presented on it as a guest. I taught other people how to present so that they would sell their products. And it's come full cycle. We are now having to sell, certainly communicate effectively and emotionally, strangely enough, through the means of a television screen. If it may be a computer monitor, but it's still a television screen.
Yeah.
And
so
it's
been an ultimate tool for keeping us connected at the minute, isn't it?
Yes.
And when we've talked of, I know it's an overused word, but the pivoting word, but it has helped to stay connected. And the amount of companies now that I certainly speak to, and I'm sure you're exactly the same, that have adapted and now will be moving forward once, you know, we talked about the new norm. Is this the new normal? But I think what we're doing is accepting the things that work for us, and they will continue to be our new normal. The very fact that you've got the big companies like Twitter, Square saying all our employees can just work from home now,
Yes.
if they're more productive, or if it's the choice that we're given to get this work-life balance sorted, which is crucial as well. How many people are actually going to want to sit
Yes.
on a train for 2 hours commuting somewhere where we can do it like this, and you've saved 2 hours and you can be more productive doing something else?
And and what you said is absolutely true. I think that we can be more productive because the external or the exterior things that can interrupt us in a conversation are no longer there. It's tiring, and I don't know if you find it, but Zoom calling or whatever facility you're using is tiring. So we need to pace ourselves during the day. That what you said about work-life balance. But I think that we are concentrating because we're listening more carefully. We're looking to pick up those nuances of facial movements, and I think it does make us much more productive as well. So, and I cringe a little bit at that term, the new normal, because actually it isn't. It's an extension of something that's been happening for some time.
Absolutely. And it's something that was brought up. I'm hosting a roundtable within this same situation. It's all virtual. It's a virtual roundtable. And we were talking about that, how this isn't a new normal. This has just accelerated where we would have probably been in a few years' time.
Yes.
And we're doing that now, and we're having to adapt to our businesses. Now, there's some elements that we won't ever use again, which is fine.
Yes.
But I think what it has done, and maybe if you wanted to elaborate as well, it's certainly given myself a bit of clarity of where I want to be and how I want to work, and making myself work a bit smarter rather than harder. Have there been any elements that you've maybe cancelled out now that you don't use, that you used to do? Or is there anything new that you've introduced that you'll be taking forward?
Yes, I think that these conversations, and where I used to present at the front of the room, and in all honesty, that is where I gained my business from, so that we would have a group at a networking situation, or I would be invited to speak at a symposium, and I would expect, and in fact, this is that mindset thing again, I would expect that from my presentation, people would come up to me if I've done my job right. And a lot of that learning of how to influence and persuade people came from my QVC experience. They would say, Dex, we need to chat, or what can you do for me? And I think what's happened now is that although we're online, the same rules apply. So rather than having to stand at the front of the room, we can now virtually speak to a group of people. And I don't know if you're finding this, but certainly a lot of the networking events can have upwards of 50 people on a call. So if we present effectively, if again, it comes back to that initial thing we were talking about, if we understand who our audience is, if we understand what are the needs of that audience that we may be able to solve, then that is a very productive way of gaining new business. So the pivoting, and the I for me in pivot, I've created an acronym. I tend to do that.
Oh, do share if you're able to. Please share it. Yeah.
Well, certainly the first we've talked about, the positive attitude, and that's sometimes difficult. So you need to collaborate with people, and if you like that, that's one of certainly my life lessons, and it's something that didn't happen at the beginning. There was a gap in trust, but now, and certainly the beginning of this year, collaboration was my key word. So a positive mental attitude that other people can assist us. And then the I is innovation. And sometimes that innovation is not something radical. It's just stepping perhaps 2 paces to the side and seeing something from a different perspective. So innovation certainly is right. The V is for vision. Where do we want to be? What is our vision of the new life, or the way that we can manage what facilities we have now? The O is to look for the opportunities. Yeah. And certainly you're a person who grants opportunities. You've allowed me to come and chat down your ear. So thank you that. But we need to look for those opportunities. And if somebody turns around and says to you, you know, I would like you to talk to my group, grab that opportunity. It's maximizing our appeal, if you like. And then T is for the talent. Do we have the right talents? Can we pivot our talents so that we can just change it slightly for this new experience that we've got? So that's important. Or do we need to bring people in who are talented that can help us? Or do we need to improve our talent pool? So that's the pivot side of it. The I is really to use it to actually include others and to actually input it. So don't just talk about it, go and do it. So that's the if I've done it right, OTI, yes, then N is what are you going to earn from it? So there always has to be the logic of numbers. And for me, the last bit is absolutely essential. And you're saying that you create a roundtable discussion that bolsters people. So the last element, the G, is grit. We have to have the grit to follow through. So that's my take on pivoting, what it really means when we have to pivot our businesses and ourselves.
You see, when it's explained like that, I can get used to that word again. I think there was an early stage where it was just overused by certainly a lot of coaches and speakers, authors. But when we've put it into a context that people can use that word and use it efficiently and yes, to boost them, I think you're very right. You've got to surround yourself with the right people as well. It's key to build yourself up, to be around the right people who will nurture your strengths. And as you rightly said, if you don't know, you ask the question or you get somebody in to do that, because as entrepreneurs, we can't be superheroes at everything. We have our expertise, we know what we can do, and we shine through that. But when we don't know something, I think the biggest skill that we can do is ask somebody.
Yes.
Ask for help.
Yes.
And that's
you know,
a key strength.
It is a strength, and you're right. And I think actually for me it was a weakness. You know, my life story, if you like, and I've, as you know, I've written a book called Stand Up and Sell, which is how people can tap into the experience that I've had with QVC and how you make those selling presentations in this kind of environment. But my history is somewhat different. I've written, yet to be published, but it will be, because we'll talk about this if it's interesting. It's called A Voyage Without My Father. Right. Because at the age of 10, I lost my dad. He died when he was just 45. And I suppose losing a dad at that age put, strangely enough, a lack of trust in people, in specifically men. And it took me some time, certainly into my early teens, certainly early teens, before I felt strong enough to allow myself to be vulnerable, to ask for help. And I think I hope it's relevant now, because I didn't have a chance to say goodbye to my dad, because at that time, kids were not allowed to go into hospitals. And what's happened now with this COVID epidemic, so many people have lost relatives, parents, and friends, and not been able to be at their side and hold their hands. So, and it's been the burden of our nurses and our doctors to stand in is it called locum in parenthesis? So it's, you know, to stand as we. And so that's why I want to publish this book now, because it will help people move on. It will help people through this crisis that we're now living, and come back to what we were saying before, look for the opportunities, think more positively.
Thank you for sharing that. I think that would be a fascinating book. And I think you're right. One of my questions actually I wanted to ask you was your earliest memory, and how has it influenced you? So I think you've almost answered that with what you've just said. And building trust is huge, whether it's your personal life, your business life. If you don't have that as a value within your life, it's very hard to move on. So what changed in your teens, do you believe, that allowed you to start trusting people?
I was very lucky. I was going to say I found mentors. I think they found me. And
Right.
certainly when I was in advertising, which was a very interesting experience, because you think being a television or a cinema extra was interesting. I worked for one of the first American advertising agencies that came to this country. And retrospectively, I found out that it was owned by the mafia. So
Wow, your story gets more interesting. This is why I don't believe half an hour is enough time. we might have to do another interview on this.
Yeah, my time with the mafia, it wasn't like that, but certainly that's where the finance came from. And I met a gentleman by the name of Norman Bond, and I don't know if he's still with us. God bless him wherever he is.
Yes, we love you. If you're mafia linked, we love all of you.
And Norman took me aside and he said to me, Dex, I was a rebellious teenager. And he said, Dex, you can do one of two things. He said, you can carry on down the path that you're now going, and whatever that may lead you, or you can knuckle down, take this seriously, and move forward and go to where your vision for life is. And I took the advice of the latter, and I would be ever thankful for Norman. He was a great mentor. And through my life, I've had extremely good mentors and people who, when asked the question, would take the time to respond to those questions.
It's so important, isn't it? And having that one person to believe in you changes everything. I personally believe it's having that one person. I did another interview for this podcast with Dr. Leanne Armitage, who received the Queen's Award, and she was talking about a similar situation where you have a mentor, somebody who believes in you, and it changes your whole life. And I just think we need more of those people out there to come and help support people. And usually mentors, they don't charge, they don't ask for anything, because they do it because they want to help.
Yes.
And they see a strength, or they see something where, again, it was a simple question, wasn't it? You could either go on this route, Dexter, or you could go to this route.
Yes.
Luckily, you chose the right one.
I think that, it was a loaded question anyway.
Yeah. But as a teenager, if you flick back to being a teenager, the temptation to go on that road rather than maybe the straight and narrow, if we call it, that temptation is very, very interesting, isn't it, to a teenager?
Yes. And I think part of it, because people do come into our lives, that we can either say that there is a purpose to that meeting, or we can say, oh, it's just another person we're meeting. And certainly with that QVC thing, I was on TV, I was presenting products, and then one of the guys at QVC who was in charge of the guests said, Dex, would you like to go on a course just to see how we train presenters and guest presenters, and see if you can help out? Now, I could have said no, because they was going to send me to America. And I said, yes. And I went out there, I did the training, and I came back and I said, the American way of selling is not going to work here. And so we sat down with the team and we worked out what would work. And strangely enough, what we're doing today formed the basis of that new training, that it was a conversation between two people. One who would ask the questions, and the relevant questions, and sometimes the deep and searching questions, and then the so-called expert would then explain about the product. And certainly it's come full cycle, because that is the way that we can effectively communicate in this environment.
And you're so right, aren't you? Because selling in America and selling here, we're totally different audiences. We might like the product. We have the same products, in fact, but it's how they are communicated and they're sold to us as different people.
Yes.
So we have different dynamics,
yeah,
different races, different religions, different upbringings. everything comes into it. So what would you say is one of your key strengths through QVC? Because as you say, you're talking to a screen, you're talking to hundreds of thousands of people watching you, in the hope that they buy that product. And as you say, and I think rightly say, we've come full circle. We're back here on a screen rather than
Yes.
both of us meeting in a restaurant, a cafe, or a studio somewhere. We're
Mm.
doing this, and it's been great. It's been absolutely brilliant. So what would you say for any of the viewers and listeners to this today would be a key strength if they're looking to promote themselves now on video, on
Yes.
TV? What would be one thing that they need to do, or is there not just one thing? Is there a few things that?
I think that there's two frameworks or two formulas, if I may, and this also comes from another mentor. Certainly, it's something that I learned at QVC, because how do we present in this environment? But also Marcus Kauke, who is a trainer with the Sandler method, also took me under his wing and gave me this formula, which really, and I think, frameworks and formulas are really helpful. We may know it, but if we can put it in a framework, then we can understand how we work through that framework. So the long answer to the question is this: I think that there are certainly 4 elements to it. In this environment, and in fact, in any environment, we need to make an emotional connection.
Yeah.
Because when we make that emotional connection, it develops that key thing that we talked about, trust. When you connect, and even in this environment, we were saying before that, lots of people have different screens behind them with their key messages on it. But actually, we're, if I can say it, speaking to people in their homes. And so we have to be aware of that. And so the emotional connection is really important. Then the other side of that formula is logic. We need to be able to give them a compelling reason, a logical reason why they should do business with us. But the first key element is understanding that person. What we said right at the beginning: understand who you're talking to, make the emotional connection, and then you can offer some logical reasons why and how you can help them. Now, the other side of that formula is, by understanding the other person, we need to understand what they're going through. What are the pains that they're experiencing? Because when we do that, again, it creates that empathy, but we understand for them at a deeper level. So we need to pull away the onion skins of a problem, because the problems that people bring to us are never the real problems. It's always deeper down. And you know this. And so we need to understand where the root cause is, having asked permission to go there. And then we can lead them to, I used to call it from pain to pleasure. Pleasure for me is quite transitory. It's, a lovely glass of wine or whatever thing you take for your high. But what I would prefer is to take people from a position of pain to happiness, because happiness is not transient. Happiness is something that is embedded in us. Again, it's an emotional reaction. So that's my advice. When you are looking to influence and persuade, not sell, but influence and persuade a client, a prospect, a colleague, or your seniors, if you're looking for promotion, understand their emotional needs, understand what logically you can do for them, then look at what is it that is going to take them from their difficulties by your actions to a resolution or to make them happy. So that's what I've learned over the years, and I hope that's helpful.
Oh, absolutely. And I think many viewers and listeners will resonate with that, because it's not about the hard sell. Nobody likes to be hard sold to. If you're going into a shop, well, when we can, when you go back into
when we get the masks on.
Absolutely, with the masks on. I think it's really interesting. Usually, if you've got a direction, you wanted a pair of shoes or something, an item that you've seen, you have that focus and you know what you'd like. But when you don't know, you don't want somebody there showing you 50 things and almost forcing it down. You will buy this, you will buy this. We all have that choice of what we want to do and how we want to do it. And I think you're really right when you look at the pain points. And if it resonates with you that, oh, yes, I can help you with that.
Mm.
But
Yeah.
again, it's your wording, isn't it? And it's how you are.
Oh,
And
the
gestures,
wording.
eye contact. There's so many things that come into it.
Yes. And going right the way back to when I trained negotiators, I said, find out who they are. Don't, if they're coming in and they're saying, we want a 4-bedroom house in a tree-lined avenue, you don't say, well, I've got, a nice 4-bedroom house and it's in a rural setting. That's not what they asked for.
No,
They wanted
no.
a 4-bedroom house, which leads you to think, okay, that's a family. So understand a little bit about the family. And it's true in a business environment as well. Why did they come to you? Why are you having that conversation?
Yeah.
Ask them. And we talked before about pivoting and understanding where the business needs to go. And certainly in the virtual boards, one of the first questions we ask of our board members is to say, when you speak to your clients, what do they say when you ask the question, why did you employ me in the first place? What was it about us or our business that made you decide to use us? Because when you do that, either you're going to get more business, or certainly you can ask them, well, in view of that, who else, when you think about it, who else would you recommend me to?
Yeah.
Because referrals, we know, isn't it? Referrals is the key
Absolutely.
way of getting
Yeah.
more business.
And it's based on relationships. We come back to trust.
Yes.
And they're key in personal, yes, and in business life. But
Yes.
both sets, that they overlap each other, and without them both in your personal or business life, I don't think we can fully succeed. It is about learning and nurturing each other. And we've seen a lot for COVID, certainly at the minute, where people have missed that human connection. I know I have. We host many events over East and West Midlands and in London, and we are missing that. I have to be honest. We are missing the welcome at the door, the little bit of banter that you have together. But as you say, we transferred online within the first week of lockdown. So I think we must have hosted, I don't know, about 20 odd meetings in the first month, just to
Wow.
keep everybody connected, because that was really crucial. And again, it was about supporting our members as well. So we're all in the same boat. We felt the same,
Yes.
oh, our businesses could be just wiped away in a minute, literally from having the word lockdown put in front of us. We're so used to controlling. We control our diaries, we control everything, we control the way we work. And, whether you're used to picking up your car keys and walking out the door, or you're going on the train, or however you're traveling, that was all wiped away. So your diary became suddenly empty very, very quickly.
Yes.
But it's having those right people around you and those relationships. So a lot of the things that you've talked about today is exactly what we try and transfer on screen. But I think we've been through, and I'm sure you have as well within your groups and your peer groups, that it's about just navigating through the ups and downs and supporting each other, sharing key information if it's helpful.
Yes.
And we'll get out the other side together. And again, I'm not a big fan like you of the words, the new normal.
No, I'm so pleased. I
I think we're creating our own normal, aren't we? We're creating how we want to work, and where we're going to take ourselves into the future.
and
Into an
that's
unknown future at the minute.
it is, and we know that, God forbid, but there could well be another wave. And again, it's how we react to it. Lots of people are going to suffer, and for some, there is no way to think positively. Certainly, there are going to be some people who are in employed situations where they can now look at their talents and say, do you know, I've been doing this for my company for so long, why can't I do it for myself?
Yeah.
And so if there is one thing I would say to people who are in that kind of situation where they are lost because either they've been furloughed and the possibility of not having a job is very real.
Yeah.
Just identify what your talents are. And
Absolutely.
sometimes it will mean writing a book. Sometimes it may be writing poetry, anything that stimulates the creative elements of you. And this sounds very strange in a business situation, but I'm a great believer that if you put the energies out there, the universe will answer.
Yes, I totally agree with you. I totally agree with you. And it is also about asking for assistance and help, isn't it? When we need to at crucial times. And I don't think there's a more crucial time that you
Yes.
could be asking for help now and supporting each other and getting us through this. Wow, I have to say thank you so much, Dexter. I think we are going to have to continue this conversation.
With the greatest of pleasure.
Thank you so much for being a guest today on Business Matchmaker TV. Listeners and viewers, all of Dexter's contact details will be on the channel, the YouTube channel, and on the website as well, businessmatchmaker.tv. So it would be great for you all to connect with him. Thank you again so much, and we look forward to seeing you again. Thank you.
Thank you for the opportunity. Thank you.